Now that we know he's going to be here, right? What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
So we know kind of wide receiver one, two, three. We've talked about four and five. I mean, what
Sure.
do you think the ceiling is for this wide receiver room? Where would you rank them in the NFL now that we know Pickens is going to be part of this thing from here on out?
Yeah, I think, and boy, we'll do the 1-2 tandem, right? Because I mean, I could talk about Flo, and we saw obviously once Lamb went down, we saw that nice jump from Flo, and I'm excited to see where Flo goes from year 2 to year 3 and what that's going to mean for the room, obviously. But I mean, if you're talking about Lamb and Pickens as a 1-2 versus anybody else's 1-2 tandem, I don't think you can get him outside of the top three. I don't 4 or 5. I think is out the window, right? I mean, we could talk about Cincinnati with Higgins and Chase. I think you could look at the Rams, talk about them with Puka and Adams, even though Adams is a little bit longer in the tooth now, where it's at. You want to have the conversation about Minnesota with Jefferson, Addison. There's some things there. But yeah, I think, yeah, I wouldn't put them lower than 3. I think there's an argument if you want to stand on business and say that they're the best wide receiver tandem now, particularly, Philly's broken up now, no Brown and Smitty anymore. Now, if you want to make the argument that Lamb and Pickens are the number one tandem in the NFL, I think there's a valid argument to be had there, but no worse than 3 though, for sure.
Yeah, and once you get in the top three in any argument, right, it's all debatable, subjective at that point. I mean, I will stand on business. I do think they're the best tandem in the NFL. And if you want to throw Flo in there too, I'll say they're probably the best three in the NFL. And Flo's got massive upside. We saw he's an older receiver, young as far as experience, old as far as age.
Right.
And he's up and coming, but I think, and I read an article by Marcus Mosher today talking about how you get Flournoy more involved. And you can sub him in and out for Lamb and Pickens, obviously in 11 person. They can run more 12, or have him on the field in 11, run more 12, and sub him in and out with Pickens at that point. And I thought that was interesting to sub Flournoy in for Lamb or Pickens, especially with Lamb, given Lamb's body of work, the amount of touches he's gotten. He's had some nagging injuries, shoulders, things like that. So if Flo can step up, which I think he did last season, he's going to do so even more this season. I would assume he's got Prescott's trust. They in OTAs they had him
Right.
running slot outside. They trust him to do multiple things, right? And
Hmm.
so I think you will see probably more substitutions in 12 personnel in formations outside of 11, where Flo might be a guy and subbing Lamb or Pickens out. Then obviously in 11 personnel, the Cowboys ran the most in 2025, 11 more than anybody else. I mean, they're going to be dominant in 11 personnel. They're not going to be able to be stopped, honestly. Their issues might come from the offensive line,
Yeah.
and that might be their Achilles heel on the outside of that O-line. As far as the receivers go, there's no doubt in my mind that their top three can beat anybody in the NFL.
Yeah, I think the interesting part here with Pickens back in the fold, obviously, is that Shotty talked about it earlier during the OTAs of, you know, understanding that Pickens can do more and mentioned some of the slot stuff that he could get him into and understanding that. But I think what also too, we talk about a flow in the 11 personnel standpoint is we know Lamb in the slot is an absolute demon, right? Lamb in the slot. Not that he can't do it, he does great work outside. But yeah, you put Flo outside, put Lamb in the slot, Pickens, do the combo. You have Pickens and Lamb on the same side. Pick your poison there with Flo on the other outside guy, probably next to Ferguson, whatnot. Yeah, you can get really creative within that spectrum. And now that you're into year 2 of this scheme with Clayton Adams, and Shotty talks about Clayton Adams being more confident as the season went along last year with the wide receivers and the passing game and stuff like that. And Shotty understanding. I mentioned this last year whenever Lamb went down. Obviously, you don't want Lamb to go down. Who wants that? But I think what was really great for Shotty in that moment was he was able to lean on Pickens and gather a better understanding of everything Pickens can do on the field, even when a Lamb's not there. So it's like, okay, now I can put you in different situations and whatnot. And that allows Flo to flourish. Now what can I do with those guys and putting different guys in the slot, different combinations and having Flo, with 11 personnel with no Tolbert in the building anymore. Good luck with him down in Miami. Maybe you don't want to do as much with Turpin now in the 11 personnel as much as you have been because of Flow and where it's at. Just to watch that kind of come together now, and Pickens and Lamb being that combo, and Pickens back here ready to go for the 26th season unlocks all that.
Yeah, I would be hesitant to take any of those top three out for a Turpin at this point. Turpin gives you the speed. You'll see him in there. At times in 11, he'll have special plays designed for him. Maybe out of the backfield, maybe off a motion, taking a handoff on an end around or something. He's also got the speed that you don't have with the other guys. So maybe you throw him in the slot, send him deep, keep the safety, tethered or whatever. But I think the predominant top three you're going to see obviously are the top three guys. And very rarely would I personally want to take a Flo out of the game from three and put in Turpin. I think this season you'll probably start to see the Cowboys, if I had to guess, wean themselves off of Turpin a bit more, even at wide receiver 4 is my prediction. And you'll see some of those other guys, younger guys that are the Holdens of the world, perhaps maybe take a step up and start playing more in that role. That's my thought. You don't get the speed with the other guys that you get with Turpin, like I said, but Turpin really is kind of that one trick pony. It's the speed, and that's really what he's got.
Yeah, I think, and there's a bit of a history here with the Cowboys, not so much from the wide receiver, right? We can talk about some of these, quote unquote, running with the Tavon Austins of the world, right? What's my guy's name? Oh,
Lucky Whitehead.
Lucky Whitehead. There's another one. Just gadget, small, speedy. What can you do? And there's been moments there's definitely been moments for Turpin as a wide receiver. The consistency, as Schottenheimer likes to famously talk about a lot, right? That's kind of the thing is it'll be one step forward, 2 steps back, or 2 steps forward, 1 step back with him, right? It's just a consistency. Now, is some of that from the play call they're giving him of the routes? Maybe. I'm not going to dive too far into that, but I think he's not much of a vertical guy as a crosser, different things of that ilk. It's just the consistency format from him at times and where it's at when it comes to Turpin. But boy, I'll tell you, with Flo coming along here, are there moments where you could use Turpin in around different things you want to do, get him into space with the quick bubble screen, something like that? Sure. But as far as that 11 personnel, I'm with you there. I think what we saw from Flo last year, Pickens back in the building, what Lamb can do in the slot. And look, Flo's getting that work in the slot, not do be in the slot all the time. They talked about Pickens moving around, right? Being multiple, right? Shotty wants to be multiple. And with those three guys and what they bring to the table, I think you have a great opportunity to be able to do that.
Yeah, and it's great that all three of those guys can play anywhere, on the field. And Pickens probably less so as far as the slot work goes, but he'll get slot work. He got some slot work last year. But being able to move Flo outside, CeeDee inside, whatever it is, and then to touch on Turpin real quick, you talked about the consistency, and nothing demonstrated that better than the Eagles game, the second Eagles game last year when he tripped, right? Caused his own fumble. The very next play from scrimmage, and I was going through and posting some clips, right? He takes a deep, if it was a post or what it was across the middle, goes, I don't even know, 50 yards or so, 60 yards, and makes a huge play in the game in a huge moment. And it's like, that's the thing. It's like hot or cold with him. He's had drops. He's had amazing catches. They're down conversions. It's like, once you get to wide receiver 4, you're going to have flaws with the receiver. And so, do the benefits of his speed and what he's able to do from a dynamic perspective outweigh those flaws in his game? And so far, mostly they have. But if you can get somebody more consistent with a higher floor, that can do some good things at wide receiver 4, play special teams, etc. At some point, probably not this year, but maybe next year and beyond, maybe you consider doing something with his roster spot, because he really does only offer a small fraction, but what he does is really, really, really good when he's doing it the right way, right? When he's consistently doing it.
Which makes me just think about old Tyler Johnson over there, and I don't know. I'm just something I'm keeping an eye on. I'm like, I know, he's a slotty guy, can do some return stuff for you. Just something I'm keeping an eye on. Not saying, I mean, Shotty hasn't said anything about it being a competition, but I'm like, you do a lot of similar things that Turpin does. Intriguing.
When you get to a certain roster spot, right, your top 3 wide receivers are locked in. You know what they are. But once you get to wide receiver 4 and beyond, it's like it's always a competition. It honestly is. And there's reasons why they go with some guys over others. But I would say Turpin really is in a competition, not for this year, but for his future with the Cowboys starting next year at this point in time.